So with that, I will say, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Allie with Uniglobe Travel Designers, and we are loving showcasing different properties and destinations that you can travel to. Today we have Tad and Jimmy with Maya Trails, and I'm just gonna kick it off right to you guys to take us to Guatemala.
Thanks, Allie. Appreciate the opportunity to share a little virtual tour with all of you joining us today of Guatemala, one of my most favorite countries in the world, and one that if I could snap my fingers, I would love to transport myself to right now. But Jimmy, my colleague, I'm actually in the States, but my colleague Jimmy is coming to us live from Guatemala City. So Jimmy, how are things down in Guate this evening?
Very good, very good. It's a bit rainy right now. We're in the middle of the rainy season, but everything's good. Welcome everyone. Thank you very much, Tad, Ali. Yeah, I'm down here in Guatemala, born and raised in Guatemala City, and passion for my country is just amazing. I know pretty much every corner of this country and almost every corner of each people here because it's just an amazing country. And Tad, that will be kicking off the presentation. He'll give you a very good overview on what Guatemala has and the amazing sights, the amazing people, colors, smells, everything that Guatemala has to offer. So I'll send it over to Tad, and welcome everyone. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jimmy. And I started my career actually as a guide in Guatemala. So every time I get to talk about it and go on a virtual tour, it's not only hopefully interesting and exciting for all of you that are watching, but also for me, it's like taking a step back into my past, which I love to do. As Jimmy mentioned, a lot of amazing sights and experiences in Guatemala. The three on your screen there are probably the three most well-known. In the upper left corner is Antigua, Guatemala, which is the former colonial capital of Spain and UNESCO World Heritage Site. In the bottom left is Lake Atitlan, called by Adolphus Huxley, the German explorer, the most beautiful lake in the world. And then of course on the right there is Tikal, which is one of the greatest Mayan ruin sites in the entire Mayan world. And Guatemala really is the heart of that Mundo Maya, or the Mayan world, both as well as for the ancient Maya there in the ruins in Tikal and others like it, but also modern Mayan people that you have an opportunity to connect with and immerse yourself in the modern Mayan culture in the highlands of Guatemala. We're going to jump right in and talk a little bit about geography and just a map here to show you to the country of Guatemala, bordered by Mexico, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador. Of course, it's in Central America, so I'll show you a map with a little bit more orientation in a second. But the highlands here, as you can see, this topographical map shows you the volcanic and mountainous spine of Guatemala, which is where most of the Mayan people live today. Over 50% of the population is indigenous Maya. And the gateway to Guatemala is Guatemala City here in the highlands, up about, I think, 5,000 feet or so of elevation. And Lake Atitlan here, Antigua, just down the road from Guatemala City. And then you have the Petén region up in the north, which is where all of the ancient Mayan ruins are. We'll get into all of that in just a second, but just a few interesting notes for this kind of crazy year of 2020 before all the craziness began happening 3-4 months ago. Both Photos and National Geographic listed Guatemala as one of their must-visit in their Photos Go list for 2020, and then the National Geographic Best Trips for 2020. I think the Photos quote is one that I want to highlight because I think there is oftentimes misperception about Guatemala, and I love the quote that they have here, which is, you know, one of the most beautiful countries in the Western Hemisphere is often one of the most misunderstood. And hopefully we'll kind of clear up some of those misconceptions today and get you all really excited to plan a trip with UTD to come visit us in Guatemala. As far as getting there, speaking of coming and visiting, again, in normal times, when everything is open again, we hope in the not too distant future, there are a lot of direct flights coming from the States here to Guatemala City. So you have direct flights coming out of LA on Delta, Houston on United, Dallas with American, Miami with American, Fort Lauderdale, as well as Atlanta with Delta, and the occasional seasonal flight from New York as well. And the flights are not very long. I think some people have a misperception that this is a really far and kind of exotic destination, but it's a 2.5-hour flight from Miami. It's about a 3-hour flight from Dallas or Houston, and about a 4-hour flight from LA. So it's really not a far flight once you get to those gateway cities. And again, in normal times, there are daily flights coming out of all of those cities into Guatemala. Let's talk about the misperceptions, the elephant in the room that oftentimes trips people up about Guatemala. And we're going to talk about health and safety. And no, we don't take guests to roast marshmallows over open lava like this picture shows you from years ago in Pacaya volcano. But Guatemala, let's say it first and foremost, is very safe. The civil war in the country ended, over 24 years ago. And the peace and reconciliation has been happening ever since. It is a level 2 travel advisory. So level 2 is the same as most of Western Europe, India, China, Kenya, South Africa, and interestingly enough, Antarctica as well. So in terms of the State Department's travel advisories, Guatemala is right up there with just about every major traveling country in the Western world. Like anything, though, you need to be smart and take precautions like you would if you were traveling in Paris or in LA or in Chicago. And of course, you want to travel with a reputable tour operator, which is why you'd be booking your trip through UTD, and then the great folks at Maya Trails would be taking great care of you. And personally, my daughter's first international trip when she was 1.5 years was to Guatemala, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to take her back today. And obviously, if it was a dangerous place, I wouldn't be taking her. So let's just get that out of the way and then move on to the good stuff, which is talking about this amazing country. And one of the things that Maya Trails really prides themselves in, and that you would be able to experience, is their incredible network of local guides. So for example, up in the upper left, Dolores from Lake Atitlan is a traditional Tsutsuhil Maya woman who speaks amazing English. She's lived for about 15 years in the US, but she also lives a traditional Mayan lifestyle on Lake Atitlan, and therefore you really get an insider's experience into what that lifestyle is like. We have Miguel here in Chichicastenango, who is again, a 5th generation mask maker for Mayan masks. So another insider experience through his eyes. Archaeologists such as Francisco Estrada Belli, who is one of the most foremost Mayan archaeologists today. Just Google him. You may have seen him on Nat Geo television. He is an archaeologist guide that we can bring in for those of you that really want to have an immersive archaeological expedition. And then, adventure guides hiking up on Pacaya volcano, bird watching and wildlife spotting up in the Petén. We've got great local guides to take care of you every step of the way. Every Guatemalan trip, or just about every Guatemalan trip, starts with Antigua, which, as I said, is the former colonial capital of Spain. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's surrounded by 3 volcanoes, and it's only about 45 minutes from the gateway of Guatemala City Airport. So Guatemala City is where you would land. And Guatemala City, we'll talk about at the end, is again, often misunderstood, actually has a lot to offer. But when you have a UNESCO World Heritage Site, 45 minutes away, most people would opt to head that 45 minutes up the road. As I said, 3 volcanoes surround it, so just a beautiful, beautiful site. And then all kinds of activities here, from adventure activities, active adventures, to incredible culinary experiences that we'll jump into. But we also often recommend that your first stop when you get to Antigua, especially after flying from the States, more than likely, or from Canada, that you want to do a walking tour. Let's work off the flights and get out and explore. And Antigua is great for walking. It's a very manageable small town. It's very atmospheric, and you're walking amongst these incredible ruins of the colonial era, former convents and cathedrals and palaces and former Spanish mansions. And walking tour is just a great way to orient yourself and stretch your legs after that long flight. It's a very safe city. One of those places that, you take a guided tour maybe to start for a couple of hours, and then you can go and explore on your own. And it's okay if you get lost. You're not gonna get into a troubled area at all. The entire town is very safe, and you'll probably have some really cool explorations or discoveries on your own. Here's one of the former municipal buildings, or maybe current municipal buildings in Guatemala, and it's very atmospheric during the day, but also at night. And again, very safe to walk around town, even in the evenings. But of course, we do always have guides that can take care of you walking you to dinner and giving you a nice walking tour in the evening as well if you want to take in the sights and sounds of Guatemala after dark. Great for families. As I mentioned, my very first trip with my daughter abroad was to Guatemala. Here she is actually in Central Park in Antigua. And it's just a great place to wander around with your family, take in the sights. Another great family here exploring on the cobblestone streets of Guatemala behind one of the famous arc there that is very picturesque. Guatemala, or Antigua, is just this really picturesque town with these colorful buildings. And like I said, all kinds of ruins for one to explore. Here's Jimmy and his young family as well. And Jimmy lives in Guatemala City, but spends a lot of time up in Antigua exploring and looking for new experiences in town. Always bringing the kids to find the latest family travel activities that we can share with you, our travelers. Of course, Guatemala is famous for coffee. It's, I think, the #3 exporter of coffee for Starbucks. So if you're into coffee, as most of us are in the States, you're gonna want to have a coffee experience in Guatemala. And there's no better way to do it than to go and experience it with a coffee farmer himself or herself. And there's a great local NGO there called As Good As It Gets, now called De La Gente, of the people. And De La Gente actually has a coffee cooperative with a bunch of small scale independent farmers like this gentleman here in your upper left. And you can actually go out with the coffee farmer, and if it's the right season, which would be about November to March, I believe, for coffee season. Jimmy, am I correct on that?
Correct.
Yes, so if you're there November to March, you can go out and actually pick the ripe red coffee cherries, and you bring them back then to the farmer's home, actually go into the farmer's home and meet the family and learn how to strip the cherry or the bean from the cherry, and you roast the beans over an open flame there on a Mayan stove. And well, I guess you wash them, then you roast them, and then you get to enjoy the fruit of your labor, a true cup or bean to cup experience. And all of it with a local family, really learning from each other, learning about what their lives are like, sharing what your life is like in the States. Of course, you have a guide and a translator with you as well. But talk about an immersive cultural experience. And these are the kind of things that we love to do. In addition to coffee, a lot of these farmers also grow peanuts. And there's quite a number of expats, especially American expats in Antigua, who miss their peanut butter, because peanut butter is not really a thing in Guatemala. You can find some peanut butter, but it's pretty expensive and not very good. Maybe Jif, things like that. But if you want true local peanut butter, there's actually a peanut butter workshop from these farmers who are farming peanuts. And you can go there and actually make your own peanut butter, again, from the plant, from the peanut shell itself, to making your own Mayan crepes, as I call them. You can't really see them in this picture on the left-hand side there, but you basically spread peanut butter on a Mayan tortilla, on a corn tortilla, top it with honey and bananas, and there you have your Mayan crepes. But again, you're inside a family's home. You're learning about what their lives are like. My daughter, admittedly, this is us visiting a few years ago, she was more interested in the family's rabbits and goats and chickens than she was in the peanut butter until she got to eat some. But my wife and I really enjoyed actually learning how to make peanut butter and eating a lot of it ourselves. And what better to go with peanut butter than chocolate? Peanut butter and chocolate. And of course, cacao Guatemala is the birthplace of chocolate. The Mayans called it the fruit of the gods. And so you have no shortage of options for learning a little bit about the origins of chocolate, including at the Choco Museum here. And of course, your kids would love to learn about and eat lots of chocolate. Great cultural, culinary experience, a little bit of a sugar high experience as well. But as you can see, lots of things for families to do. Keeping with the culinary theme, the Hass avocado, which many of us purchase in our supermarket on a daily or weekly basis, is actually first cultivated in Guatemala, not in California, as a lot of people, I think, believe. So you can go out and learn about the cultivation of the avocado in Guatemala. Go out again with a farmer, learn about its many benefits and its uses, and then come back to the family home and make avocado smoothies, or of course guacamole. There's Jimmy's little boy Michael, actually. As I told you, Jimmy's often up in Antigua testing out these new experiences, and he took the family up and they test drove this avocado experience a few years ago, and it got the it got the passing grade, and it's now something that we can offer to families that are interested in this kind of activity. Community cooking experiences, a lot of culinary stuff here, because really there's no better way to understand culture than through food and through your stomach, right? So lots of opportunities for, again, connecting with local people, doing a community cooking experience in the home of a Mayan family, and learning how to cook the traditional chicken pepian, which is one of Guatemala's traditional dishes. And again, learning about the family's lives and how they live every day, and tasting some of their food. A little bit on a different level, you could do a market tour, go to the market in Antigua, learn about how Guatemalans shop for their fruits and vegetables. As Jimmy said, it's a feast for the senses at the market, sights and sounds and smells. And then go back to a 300-year-old colonial mansion, which is where the cooking class is held, and learn about how to cook another traditional Guatemalan meal. So really stepping back in time, 300 years back in time in this home, to learn about the culture of Guatemala through food. De La Gente also offers a number of experiences beyond the food, with connecting with local people and doing some good as well. And it's these community-based experiences where you can connect with local craftsmen and artisans and farmers, as I mentioned already. And one thing about that is that the cost of those tours, 100% of it goes to that family, to that farmer, to that craftsperson. So you really are creating economic opportunities and doing some real good for the local people in this area. Now, back to the dining, or back to culinary delights. After getting your hands dirty, maybe going out and picking coffee beans or shelling peanuts, you can have a first class, Michelin star level meal in Antigua. There are some amazing restaurants. The food is incredible. Some great chefs that come out of Guatemala. But in addition to the food, you've got these incredibly atmospheric locations for the restaurants. In the upper left there, you see you've got a view of a volcano. That, or you're going to be in the home of a former colonial mansion, or in a former convent or a former cathedral. So the places where you're dining are also just really dripping with atmosphere. And then of course you're going to enjoy a really incredible meal as well. One of the things I like to recommend people do, not everybody listens to me, but I'll try again, which is, if you really want to understand the culture of Guatemala and of what it's like to be Guatemalan, you've got to ride a chicken bus. The chicken bus is a traditional public bus in Guatemala that are plying the streets everywhere. Now, we wouldn't recommend you go take a 3-hour ride on a mountain road in a chicken bus for a variety of reasons. I've done it, I've survived it, but I wouldn't recommend it. But we would say, take a 30-minute ride with your guide outside of Antigua and learn why it's called a chicken bus. You're guaranteed to meet somebody selling a cure-all for just about every ailment, as well as a local preacher, more than likely. Sometimes they happen to be the same person. You're also going to see likely chickens on the bus, maybe goats, and then just Guatemalans living their daily lives. And you really do get an immersion into what it's like to commute to work in Guatemala and to be a local in the area. So again, 30 minutes with a guide. It's just kind of a fun experience to really immerse yourself in the culture. So getting past all the culinary stuff that I keep coming back to because I like food, adventure activities abound, from mountain biking on single track trails on the hills above Antigua for those really hardcore mountain bikers, to gentle rides in the lowlands and the valleys, to zip lining and hiking in the hills as well. There's a plethora of outdoor options. For those hikers, as I alluded to earlier, you can go climbing some of Guatemala's volcanoes. There's actually 33 volcanoes in Guatemala, 3 of which are active, and one of which, the active ones, you can actually climb, and that's Volcan Pacaya there in the upper left corner. And Pacaya is it's active, but not explosively so. It does have some mild volcanic activity well away from where you would be hiking, but it's actually a pretty easy hike. Most people can do it. It's an hour and a half, fairly wide trail to a mirador or a viewpoint overlooking the crater there. And then of course, we like to set up a really nice picnic lunch, or if it's a sunset experience, you want to watch the sunset over the volcanic spine of Guatemala, we can set up drinks and appetizers to watch the sunset. It's just a great experience. If you have families, kids can do it, but if anybody isn't able to, there's also horses available for a little bit of an extra charge to take you up to the viewpoint. So a little bit of adventure. And you can actually roast s'mores or roast marshmallows and make Guatemalan s'mores on some of the small hot spots that do appear in the volcanic crust there. There's no flowing lava like in the picture I showed you earlier from the old days. But you can actually make a Guatemalan s'more, which is pretty cool. In the upper right is a picture of Volcan Fuego, which is pretty active, very explosively so. You can't hike to the top of that one, of course, but there is a hike to nearby Catanengo volcano for those really keen hikers and backpackers. You can do an overnight camping trip to watch Fuego erupt at night, which is from a safe distance of a Catanengo, which is a pretty incredible experience. So little known fact as well, for those of you that are fishermen or fisherwomen, Guatemala is the sailfish capital of the world. I bet you did not know that unless you're a fisherman or a fisherwoman. But this is something that is a fairly easy thing to do as a day trip. It's an hour-and-a-half transfer from Antigua. And you can see in that picture to the left, that's Volcan Agua, actually, that you're looking at from the Pacific Ocean. And that's the volcano that towers over Antigua. So just behind that volcano is actually the town of Antigua. So it takes an hour-and-a-half drive from there, and then off you go on a sail fishing adventure. It's all catch and release. And there are some lodges as well if you're a really keen fisherman or fisherwoman and you want to spend several days out on the Pacific trying to reel in sailfish. You can do that from a lodge that's located on the Pacific coast. All right, we're going to do a quick couple of hotels and then we'll move on to our next stop, Posada de Angel, one of the beautiful boutique hotels in Antigua. As I mentioned ad nauseum here, Antigua is full of atmosphere, and not only where you're having dinner and dining, where you're walking around, but where you're staying as well. They've converted some of these beautiful old ruins of mansions and convents and cathedrals into these really beautiful boutique hotels, none of which are extremely expensive either. There's a really great value, especially considering how comfortable and how just full of character they are. And all of them have, you know, a roof deck that looks out over the volcanoes as well, where you get to enjoy your morning coffee, like here at Posada de Angel. Another property that we like, very conveniently located near the Central Park, is El Mesón de Maria, a little bit on a cheaper level than Posada de Angel, but a wonderful property, again, in a former colonial mansion, so just dripping with atmosphere as well. So no shortage of really wonderful boutique properties, and these are only just a couple of them. There's dozens of them in town, and of course UTD can help you to book the right property for your budget and for your interests. If you're a camper or a glamper, there's these Airstream trailers outside of town where you can spend a night up in the forest in a converted Airstream, which is pretty cool. Or you can actually do a true glamping experience over on an overlooking the Antigua Valley and the volcanoes, where you have real beds, showers, chef-prepared meals, very big tents, so very comfortable. You know, this is glamping for sure. And for those of you that are really big hikers and trekkers, you can actually do a 4-day, 3-night trek from Antigua to Lake Atitlan, again, using those big glamping tents with full beds and chef-prepared meals and opportunities to really connect with local people along the way. So speaking of Lake Atitlan, here we are. That's our next stop on our virtual tour. As I said, Adolphus Huxley called it the most beautiful lake in the world, and you'll see why in a second. But here on that map in your lower right, you see Guatemala City, then Antigua was our first stop, and now we're farther into the highlands at Lake Atitlan. It's about a 3-hour drive from Antigua, or if you're interested in helicopters, there's no shortage of helicopters in Guatemala, and you can take about a 25-minute scenic flight from Antigua to Lake Atitlan over all those volcanoes into this really beautiful lake. The quote that I like to share comes from Adolphus Huxley, the English author. He said, "Lake Como, it seems to me, in Italy, touches on the limits of permissible picturesque. But Atitlan is Como with the additional embellishments of several immense volcanoes. It really is too much of a good thing." And I think that says it all. It's surrounded by 12 indigenous villages, as well as 3 volcanoes, these verdant volcanoes. And it's just a wonderful place to experience local Mayan culture through the handicrafts, through art, and through their unique traditions. So you've got this amazing mix of beautiful culture and just picturesque and stunning natural beauty as well, with opportunities for lots of active adventures as well. And then yoga and wellness tourism here is something special as well, which we'll talk a little bit about. So Lake Atitlan was a former volcano. It's a collapsed volcanic caldera. It's a high altitude mountain lake. It's about 5,500 feet in elevation, and it's incredibly deep, well over 1,000 feet deep in the center of it. And here's a picture of Jimmy and his family on their last trip out to the lake before all this COVID business started happening. And on my last trip to Guatemala with my family, again, was on that same tour, which I'm sad to say was about 4 or 5 years ago now. So Jimmy, I need to get back as soon as these lockdowns end. I want to get back to Lake Atitlan. But it is, for me, I used to lead hiking tours to Lake Atitlan, so it has a very special place in my heart. It really is one of my soul places in the world. And so if I get a little bit long-winded and teary-eyed here, you know why. But, you know, Chichicastenango is a famous Mayan market we'll touch on in a second. But if you are interested in markets, Lake Atitlan has some incredible local markets. And here's one called Solola. This is the town just above the lake that has, you know, a weekly market, or maybe even a twice weekly market, where you can go and immerse yourself in the feast for the senses, the sights and the sounds. We do a really cool tour where you can go with a chef, shop for ingredients for a cooking class, and then take it back to your private villa on the lake and learn about cooking, you know, chicken pepin or another Guatemalan traditional dish in your own villa with your own private chef, and you've actually shopped for all the ingredients yourself. So it really is an immersive culinary and cultural experience. A lot of Mayan traditions here that meld the Mayan traditions, the spiritual traditions, and the Catholic faith that was brought by the Spanish, this syncretism of Mayan spiritual traditions and Catholicism. One of them is Mashimon. He is a traditional Mayan folk saint that is worshipped by the local people. This is actually a shaman who is making an offering and a blessing for a client who is you know, looking for the blessing on their marriage, but people also do blessings for their business, for business success, for fertility, you know, for all kinds of things. And this happens every single day throughout the year in this town in Lake Atitlan called Santiago. People come and give offerings to Mashimon, who's the character there in the far right. And really interesting tradition, more that you could learn about when you go there, but it would take a whole dissertation to tell you the whole history of Mashimon. But it is something that you must go see, just to because it is quite interesting, quite unique. And actually, one family is in charge of Mashimon for an entire year to take care of him and to manage the flow of people coming to visit.
And actually, to add, Tad, Dolores, our specialist guide in Santiago, she hosted Mashimon last year in her home. So it was a very special thing to have Dolores as your guide, taking you to her home to see the Mashimon.
Yeah, it's a true honor, really, to have that opportunity to be the host. And yeah, Dolores had that honor. I think it was last year. There's Dolores, actually, in the upper left, in the center, our local Tsutsuhil indigenous guide, who I mentioned earlier in the presentation. She lives a traditional life, but she also lived in Santa Fe for 15 years, so she speaks great English, and she really gives you this insider view into what life is like as a traditional Tsutsuhil Maya woman. And there's all kinds of opportunities to immerse yourself in the Mayan life, and one of those is learning about the traditional Mayan art of backstrap loom weaving. And Dolores is actually a master weaver herself and can teach, if you have guests or if you're someone who's interested in learning about that craft and want to spend a whole day with Dolores learning about it and actually trying it yourself, that's something that we can arrange as well. But even for those that just want to have a demonstration, it's fascinating to see the process of how it works. And again, these are all women's cooperatives. Visiting them, you're helping to contribute to the empowerment of local women and to the economic well-being of local people and local women as well, which is really important. Guatemala famous for its naif art, which is that perspective from above in the upper left there. So lots of galleries, especially in a small town there called San Juan, as well as a medicinal plant cooperative, also run by women, where local plants and herbs are used to produce soaps and shampoos, essential oils, body lotions, things like that. But you get to tour around. That was my wife and some friends of mine touring around smelling some of the herbs, and then we got to see how they were made into those oils and soaps and things. Adventure activities abound as well. Obviously, it's a lake, so if you like kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding, that's a must-do. A lot of hiking trails, from summiting one of those volcanoes, which is a full-day activity, to just doing easy hikes some of the Mayan footpaths that connect the villages. So you're actually walking on these, Mayan highways, if you will, Mayan footpaths between the villages, which is really cool and a cultural experience, walking through farmers' fields and fields of other types of produce as well. It's pretty special. For those adventurous, you can also do some cliff jumping there on the right. And then, as I mentioned, yoga. Lake Atitlan just has this incredible spiritual feel to it. It's a spiritual lake. It's a sacred lake to the Maya, and there's just something about it. So it's a great place for yoga or meditation retreats, and there's a number of options. But all of them are going to give you this incredible view of the sunrise over the volcanoes and the lake. So it's an incredible place to find your center, and maybe something after this crisis passes that more people will be looking for. And just a few of the properties and the boutique hotels on offer on the lake. The only Relais Chateau property in Guatemala is on Lake Atitlan, Casa Palopo. Beautiful property, boutique hotel that has about 11 rooms and these amazing views out over the lake with the volcanoes beyond. And this is the property I mentioned where you can do your private chef in your own villa. There are 6 different villas of varying sizes. So again, in the post-pandemic world, this may be the kind of place you'd want to go, where you can have, it's your own villa for your family or for your group, and you don't have to interact with anybody else but your own family, and you can have a private cooking class with a chef as well. And again, all of these villas look out over Lake Atitlan, and they're all pretty good value, from $150 per night for the villa up to probably $300 per night. Casa Palopo might get up into that $600 per night range during high season for the room. So, but still, pretty good value considering the quality of the properties. Hotel Atitlan, a little bit of a bigger property, has a really nice colonial feel to it as well. But then you've got that incredible view. I mean, talk about having a nice swim overlooking Lake Atitlan with the volcanoes beyond. It just doesn't get better than that. So we're going to go up to Chichicastenango, which is the largest Mayan market in Guatemala. I think it is the largest indigenous market in the Americas as well. It's really the Mayan supermarket. It's every Thursday and Sunday. It's a must-do for anybody visiting Guatemala. And yes, is it touristy? Yes, it is touristy because it is a big attraction. But it's still something that is authentic, because every Thursday and Sunday, the Maya from the entire region come to do their shopping. So if you get away from the handicrafts, which is where all the tourists are for the most part, buying local handicrafts, hopefully local handicrafts, you get away from that part, maybe do it for a minute, buy a few things, and then go and experience the real market where the Mayans are buying their fruits and their veg and their meat and their shoes and their clothes. And it's just, there's everything you can imagine for sale, all being sold by local people. It's an hour and a half from Lake Atitlan, so it works really well as a day trip from the lake, or going to and from Lake Atitlan from Antigua. So we try to work it in to your itinerary. Again, it has to be on a Thursday or Sunday, but something that we highly recommend. And as I mentioned, the handicrafts are a big thing, as well as syncretism, which I'll talk about. And Jimmy has a pretty cool story about a mask maker, which we'll get to. But it is the Mayan supermarket. What's interesting about the Catholic and Mayan syncretism is the church here, Santo Tomas, in the lower right-hand corner, was built originally back in 1545 on top of a pre-Columbian Mayan temple. And the steps that led to the temple are now the steps that lead to the church, and they remain venerated by both Mayan people, Mayan tradition, as well as Catholic traditions. Quiche Mayan priests actually still make sacrifices on the steps of the church, even inside the church. And there are actually 18 stairs that lead up to the church, and those 18 stairs represent the 18 months of the Mayan calendar. So this is the syncretism I'm talking about, where you have the Mayan spirituality integrated into the Catholic faith as well, that the Spanish brought. So really interesting stuff in Chichi. And one of those things that Maya Trails can bring to the table with UTD is this opportunity to connect with a 5th generation Mayan mask maker named Miguel, who I showed you a picture of earlier. There he is in the lower left with Jimmy's 2 kids. And Jimmy, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about this experience since you've been there recently.
Awesome. Yeah. And actually, when you mentioned about the church, every mass takes about 2 to 2.5 hours, because it's always done with a Catholic priest and a Mayan shaman. So it's, there goes that syncretism, and it's
Yeah.
amazing to just sit there those 2 hours and a half that you don't understand a single word of what's going on, because they're using they're using the I can't remember, Quiche,
Mom or Quiche, yeah.
Mam or Quiche, because there's 23 different dialects in Guatemala. So that's one of them there. So this is Miguel Ignacio. So this is where we go out of the box and step away from all that touristy area. You know, we visit the market, you visit the church, and you get the feeling. And then we go off to his home, where he's a 5th generation Moreria. That's the mask maker and the dress that they use for the Santo Tomas celebrities that's done at the end of the year in for about 2 weeks at the end of the year. That's when the Santo Tomas festivities are. They are the only ones authorized, and they are the only ones that do these the masks and the dress. So his home is amazing. You have his mom is there, his sister's there, so we can do a cooking experience with the mom. And I only have images here of when we do the mask making. So for the kids, they had a ball. You know, they were so impressed that the day before we did kayaking at Lake Atitlan, and then we did the mask making. And I asked them, what was your favorite part of these 2 days? They were amazed about the mask making. And then he has access to this mound where it's about a 20-minute trek up. It's called Pascual Abaj. And this is where the real Mayan people go up and do their Mayan ceremonies. So he takes you up, and in 90% of the times you'll find a real Mayan ceremony going on. Then you come back down, you can have they can do like a special dance from those festivities that they do of Santo Tomas, the cooking experience, and he's got tons of other experiences, but I don't want to bore you all. But this is where we go out of the box and go out of what you have in that hustle and bustle of the market.
Yeah, really getting off the beaten path and getting away from the touristy parts of the market and experiencing what locals experience. You know, like you say, having that experience of the Santo Tomas celebration, you know, a recreation of that. It's not something that every visitor to Chichi, very few would have that experience. And that's what makes going to Chichi special with Maya Trails, is getting away from, you know, from the big bus tours with lots of people around the handicraft market. So we're going to now jump back in time, and I'm going to wrap up here in about 8 minutes, maybe 10. So thanks for sticking with us. We're going to go back in time now from the modern Maya, which you've just been immersed in for the past, you know, let's say 5-6 days, between Antigua, Lake Atitlan, Chichi, in the mountainous spine of Guatemala. And now we're going to actually go back in time up to the ancient Maya, the heart of the ancient Mayan world, the Petén. So not only are we going back in time, we're going down. So we're going from 5,000-6,000 feet down to basically sea level, thick jungle, hot and humid. You know, the other thing about the highlands in Guatemala, it's the land of the eternal spring because of the altitude. So it's always nice and pleasant, you know, 75, 80 degrees during the day, can get chilly at night, but during the day, it's this eternal spring-like weather. But then you get down to the Mayan lowlands, to the Petén, and it's hot and humid, and it really feels pretty exotic. And here you are getting to witness what was the peak of the Mayan civilization, you know, 1,200, 1,000 years ago, when the Maya were building these incredible pyramids. There's about 15 or 20 excavated Mayan ruins. Of course, you've heard of a few of them, probably Tikal, Palenque, of course, in Mexico, Chichen Itza, maybe in Mexico, others in Guatemala, Yaxha, Homul, which we'll talk briefly about, El Mirador, actually one of the least accessible ones and one of the biggest in the Mayan world. Pretty incredible story. Huashactun, Saibal, so lots of different ruins. Of course, Tikal is what most people know of and go and experience. Also, you have this amazing lake called Petenitza, amazing birding. If you're interested in birds, the Petén is full of incredible number of species and some endemics as well. And then it's also the gateway to Belize. We're not going to talk about Belize today, but Guatemala and Belize combine very well together, you know, in a week or a 10-day trip, where you can spend time in the highlands, in the Petén, and then go across to Belize, either by air, by plane, or by road. And this is the gateway to Belize. So that's another webinar entirely. But as I said, this is the heart of the Mayan world. For families, I like to call these Mayan ruins kind of archaeological jungle gyms, because kids get to play on these ancient ruins, and you know, you feel a little bit like Indiana Jones stepping back in time into the, you know, to the Mayan days. But it's just a great place where kids can explore, and then and of course adults as well, just find themselves just, you know, marveling at the mysteries that are still yet to be unlocked, because only about 5% at the very most of the Mayan world has been excavated. Just a tiny fraction of it. Even Tikal, I think, has only been about 15% excavated. And so you see all these big mounds elsewhere that are covered in jungle, and you know that there's another Mayan secret underneath that mound that has yet to be explored. With lots of adventure activities as well, just about anywhere in Guatemala, zip lining. You've got these beautiful lakes you can go swim in, canopy tours, kayaking, hiking as well. You can actually hike to some of the Mayan ruins if you're really adventurous. Wildlife is there, and you'll see a lot of it, especially birds and monkeys. I did put a picture of a jaguar in the upper left, but it's unlikely you'll see a jaguar, but there is a population of jaguars in Guatemala, so you never know. I will say, several trips ago, I got very lucky and actually saw a jaguar in Tikal, believe it or not. Jimmy was there as well. We will never guarantee that to happen again, but it was pretty special experience. But you've got the Cotamundis there all over Tikal, spider monkeys, howler monkeys, and incredible diversity of bird life. We like to also do what we kind of do a little steal from Africa here, a sundowner experience, Guatemalan style. You can do that on the top of a temple in Yaksha, which is one of the lesser visited Mayan ruin sites. And you can have some canapes and maybe a glass of wine as the sun sets over the Yaksha Lagoon and the jungle comes to life. You hear the howler monkeys howling, the birds beginning to chirp, and it's just a pretty spiritual experience, like the young woman there in the lower right, sitting on top Yaksha, kind of meditating, watching the sunset. Something that we love to do with guests. If you want to go glamping here, we can actually do it inside of a Mayan ruins site as well at Washaktun, where you sleep the night in an ancient ruin. Again, talk about getting the chills. Have dinner under the candlelit glow of a Mayan temple, and then sleep in a bed, have showers. You know, it's very luxurious glamping as well. For those of you that really want to get off the beaten path and you want to go explore an active dig site, we actually work with this incredible archaeologist I mentioned before, Francisco Estrada Belli. He's been excavating Homul for, well over a decade, maybe 2 decades now, and has had some absolutely incredible discoveries, which I don't have time to go into today, but just Google his name and you'll see the kind of amazing things he's discovered. The largest contiguous intact Mayan frieze ever found in the Mayan world, he found at Homul. And we can actually helicopter guests in with Francisco as your guide to go on and explore the active dig that he is managing there. Francisco can also be brought in as a guide for Tikal. If you don't have the time or the budget to helicopter to Homul, we can also bring Francisco down just to be a guide around Tikal or Yaksha. And here we are on a group a couple of years ago doing just that. And his insights are incredible. If you love Mayan archaeology, you want to learn more, he's definitely an amazing person to give you that experience. So a few properties up in the Petén, there's lots of them as well, but just to scratch the surface, Las Lagunas in your luxury category, Las Lagunas Boutique Hotel, lovely property right in its own lagoon. You can go kayaking on their lagoon, amazing food, very spacious little cabanas that over the water there, as you can see, and a beautiful infinity pool, very conveniently located as well. Speaking of conveniently located, if you want to stay inside of Tikal, there's a couple options, but the one that we really prefer is the Jungle Lodge. So if you're going to do any early morning tours, like a sunrise tour of Tikal, staying at the Jungle Lodge, make sure you wake up a little bit later. Most of the other properties outside of Tikal are going to be anywhere from a half an hour to an hour transfer to Tikal from your hotel. But here at the Jungle Lodge, you're staying right in the 15 steps from the gate of Tikal, so it makes it kind of nice for a sunrise tour as well. Again, lots of other options. Those are just a couple, and we're going to finish up here in Guatemala City, so kind of completing our circle, flying back to Guatemala. So of course, I didn't mention it before, but you actually fly from Guatemala City up to Tikal. If you took a bus, it would take you 12 or 15 hours, and we wouldn't want to subject you to that. It's a long trip. A lot of backpackers do it, but we wouldn't recommend it. Flights are cheap and only take 45 minutes. So here we are now flying back to Guatemala City. If you're not going to Belize, of course, you could go from Petén over to Belize. But if you're continuing or finishing your journey in Guatemala, you're heading back to Guatemala City. It's a big capital city. Yes, there are some dangerous parts of the city, just like there are in LA and Chicago and Seattle, where I am. So you just don't go to those places, and you stay in the safe tourist areas. There's some amazing museums, excellent restaurants. So if you're interested in Mayan archaeology, some of the best top museums for Mayan archaeology are in Guatemala City. So you cannot miss that. And again, if you're going with somebody like Francisco Estrada Belli, he could take you on a private tour. We actually, as Maya Trails, have access to a non-public part of the Ixchel Museum, which is the foremost museum for Mayan textiles in the world. Jimmy, his wife, is actually on the board of the Ixchel, and we can take you into the vault with a curator, where you get to see all kinds of displays that have not been put into the public part of the museum, which is pretty special. And then lastly, I always got to finish with some culinary thing. And if you like rum, Zacapa rum is one of the best rums in the world, and it's made in Guatemala. And there's Zacapa rum tasting rooms, both in Guatemala City as well as in Antigua. Didn't mention that before, but yeah, if you like rum or you just enjoy spirits at all, or even wine, you need to go taste some Zacapa rum, whether it's at a rum tasting or just when you're in Guatemala. All right, we're going to finish off here with a few examples of hotels, and then Ali, I think we open it up to any questions that we have. The Intercontinental, lots of big name, brand name hotels in Guatemala City, and here's just two of them. The Intercontinental, probably your best top-end luxury hotel, very comfortable in a very safe part of town, very close to the airport as well. And then newly opened, one of the Hyatt-centric brands, has a beautiful pool there, roof deck pool, and also very conveniently located to the international airport. All right, 46 minutes of a virtual tour around Guatemala. I hope you enjoyed it. There's your moment of zen at the end here, which is the beautiful Lake Atitlan, the most beautiful lake in the world, one of my soul places in the world. I wish I could transport myself there right now, Ali, but I'll have to stay here in Seattle for now. And then just some of the call to action here, the contacts at Uniglobe, if you need those, they're on your screen. And now I'm open to, if there are any questions, answering those. And if not, then hopefully everybody enjoyed their little virtual tour.
That was incredible. Thank you so much. I do want to say for people on the call, there are a few ways to ask questions. There is a Q&A portion on the bottom of the Zoom screen. There's also a chat feature, and also a feature where you can raise your hand and we can open up your mic and you can just chat with us. So you can do any one of those three. We'll give people a couple of seconds and see if there are any questions. Otherwise, just, thank you so much for being here with us. Stay connected with us. If any other questions pop into anyone's head, email, phone, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, carrier pigeon, messaging bottle, we are here. We are here and we are accessible. So
yeah, and of course the Maya Trails team is there backing you guys up. Should there be any questions about specific tours or hotels? As I mentioned, I just kind of scratched the surface today. I could have gone on for another 45 minutes or another 2 hours, really, diving into some of the other experiences, and we can tailor make anything. So if you're interested in learning about microbreweries in Guatemala, there is a microbrewery scene, I think everywhere in the world now today there is, but you can actually do that in Guatemala, and we can design a tour around that. Obviously culinary is a theme that I keep going back to. So if you're really interested in food and you want to do an immersive culinary tour, learn all about the Mayan traditions and how they're integrated into modern food, that's the kind of thing we can tailor make with your travel designers. So, and we love to do that. Really, having the challenge of designing some sort of unique bespoke tour is really what gets the Maya Trails team excited. So we'd love to help you guys out if you have really challenging, unique, tailor-made type of requests. So we look forward to it.
that's awesome. Thank you again. I don't see any questions. So again, we are accessible. We are here. Reach out. And thank you again, everyone, so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, Ali. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening.